My ex-wife demanded half of my lottery winnings after leaving me broke in our divorce. But this time, she got nothing. I am 39, looking back on how winning the lottery exposed my ex-wife's true colors. Not that I needed much convincing after what she'd already put me through. I still remember the day I discovered her affair. It was one evening in March, and I'd come home early from work with takeout from her favorite dessert, hoping to surprise her. Instead, I was the one who got surprised. The signs had been there for months, the late nights at work, the mysterious text messages, her growing emotional distance. But nothing prepares you for finding your wife of 8 years in your own bed with her just a friend from the gym. The next few months were a blur of pain and betrayal. Cindy, my ex-wife, didn't even have the decency to act remorseful. Instead, she turned it around on me, claiming I'd been emotionally unavailable and that I drove her to it. The worst part? She'd been planning her exit strategy for months, quietly moving money from our joint accounts into her personal one, building a nest egg while systematically destroying ours. The divorce was brutal. Her lawyer was a shark in an expensive suit, and she'd somehow convinced the judge that she deserved the lion's share of our assets because she'd supported my career. Never mind that I was the one working overtime to maintain our lifestyle while she was finding herself at yoga retreats and apparently in our bedroom with her instructor. I lost almost everything. Our house gone, my savings decimated. Even my prized collection of vintage vinyl records, which she'd always hated, somehow ended up in her possession, probably sitting in some dusty storage unit now. Those first few months post-divorce were some of the darkest of my life. I'd wake up each morning feeling like I was underwater, struggling to breathe, wondering how I'd let someone take so much from me, not just materially, but emotionally too. I started working 2 jobs, my regular position at the logistics company during the day and bartending at night. Every dollar I earned felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my independence. Then came that fateful day at the gas station. I'd stopped to fill up my beaten-down car, the only car I could afford after the divorce, and on a whim bought a lottery ticket. I remember joking with the cashier about how this one's gonna be it, the way people always do. The ticket went into my jacket pocket, and I honestly forgot about it for days. I was having my morning coffee, half watching the local news while getting ready for work when they announced the winning numbers. Something made me pause. The numbers sounded familiar. I dug through my jacket pockets, found the crumpled ticket, and nearly spilled coffee all over myself. The numbers matched, all of them. The next few weeks were a crash course in how to handle sudden wealth. I did everything right this time. Hired a top-notch attorney who specialized in lottery winners, kept my mouth shut about the win, and took steps to protect my identity as much as legally possible. The amount wasn't headline-making billions, but it was enough millions to change my life completely if handled correctly. I moved methodically, deliberately, paid off my debts, bought a modest but comfortable house in a nice neighborhood, set up investment accounts, made some charitable donations to causes I cared about, and generally tried to be smart about it. The whole time I kept thinking about how Cindy would react if she knew. But she was out of my life, and I intended to keep it that way. 3 peaceful years passed. I'd found a rhythm to my new life, made new friends, even started dating again casually. Then came that phone call. "Hey, stranger," her voice dripped with fake sweetness, the same tone she'd used when trying to convince me that those late-night texts were just work stuff. My stomach clenched. "Cindy, why are you calling? Can't an old friend check in, see how you're doing?" She paused for effect. "I hear you're doing quite well these days." My blood ran cold. Someone had talked. In a town this size, it was probably inevitable that word would eventually get back to her. I kept my voice neutral. "I'm fine. What do you want?" She danced around it for a while, reminiscing about the good times, claiming she'd been thinking about me lately. Finally, she got to the point. "So, when were you going to tell me about the lottery win?" "I wasn't," I replied flatly. "We're divorced. My financial situation is none of your business." She laughed, that familiar condescending laugh that used to make my skin crawl. "Oh, honey, we were married for 8 years. Don't you think I deserve to share in your good fortune?" I hung up, but Cindy wasn't done, not by a long shot. A week passed, and my phone lit up with her number again. My stomach clenched as I debated whether to answer. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I knew Cindy, she'd just keep calling until I picked up. "What now?" I answered, not bothering to hide my irritation. "Hey." Her voice was softer this time, almost vulnerable. I recognized this tactic. She'd used it countless times during our marriage when she wanted something. "Can we meet for coffee? I've been doing a lot of thinking." I let out a heavy sigh. I think we said everything we needed to say last time. Please. There was a tremor in her voice that would have once tugged at my heartstrings. Things haven't been, I just need to talk to you. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at a coffee shop, neutral territory, public enough that she couldn't make a scene. When I arrived, she was already there. I've been thinking about us, she started, her eyes downcast. About how things ended, maybe if we'd tried harder. I cut her off. There is no us, Cindy. You made sure of that when you slept with your trainer in our bed. She flinched but pressed on. I know I made mistakes, huge ones, but life hasn't been kind since then. I lost my job at the firm last month. She paused, likely waiting for me to express sympathy. When I didn't, she continued, I'm behind on my mortgage, my car payment. The performance was almost impressive. Her voice cracked at just the right moments, her eyes welling up with tears that didn't quite fall, but I'd seen this show before. And then, she continued, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, I heard about your lottery win. It felt like maybe it was a sign, a chance for us to start over. I couldn't help but laugh, which made her jump. A sign? The only sign here is that you haven't changed a bit. You're still looking for someone to bail you out. Her expression shifted, the vulnerable facade cracking. I gave you 8 years of my life, she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. I supported you while you built your career. I deserve. You deserve? I leaned forward, keeping my voice low but intense. Let's talk about what you deserve. You cheated on me, gaslit me for months, then took everything in the divorce. You left me sleeping on a friend's couch while you lived in our house with your boyfriend, the same boyfriend who didn't work out. Color flooded her cheeks. That's not. The lottery ticket was bought, and 1 year after you destroyed our marriage. I cut in. Years after you cleared out our joint accounts. Years after you convinced the judge that you deserved most of our assets because you'd supported my career, the same career you called boring and beneath you. The tears were gone now, replaced by something colder. We'll see about that, she said, gathering her designer bag. I gave you the best years of my life, and I deserve half of everything you have. My lawyer will be in touch. As she stood to leave, I called after her. You already took half of everything I had once, Cindy. Lightning's not going to strike twice. She paused at the door, shooting me a look that was pure venom. Don't be so sure about that. Watching her storm out, I felt a mixture of anger and pity. She was still the same person who'd torn my life apart 3 years ago, just with a different target in sight. But this time, I wasn't the broken man she'd left behind. This time, I was ready for her. What followed was a legal nightmare. She actually found a lawyer willing to take her case, trying to argue that the lottery winnings were somehow connected to our marriage. They filed papers claiming I had concealed assets during the divorce, suggesting I had won the lottery earlier and hidden it. It was completely fabricated, but we still had to go to court. The day of the hearing was surreal. Cindy showed up in a conservative blue dress, playing the part of the devoted ex-wife who'd simply fallen on hard times. She'd even styled her hair the same way she had during our divorce proceedings, the innocent victim look she'd perfected. Her performance on the stand was Oscar-worthy. She wept about how she'd supported me through thick and thin, conveniently leaving out the part about her affair. She claimed she'd given me money for lottery tickets during our marriage, implying some connection to my winning ticket. When pressed for dates, she grew vague, saying through tears that she couldn't remember exactly but was certain it was before our divorce was final. My attorney systematically destroyed her claims. He produced the lottery ticket purchase date, the claiming documentation, bank records showing the deposit, all well after our divorce was final. When Cindy tried to argue that she'd contributed to my ability to buy the ticket, the judge asked her pointed questions about our divorce settlement. Mrs. Harrison, the judge said, consulting the documents, according to these records, you received 70% of the marital assets in the divorce, is that correct? Cindy squirmed. Yes, but... And Mr. Thompson was left with significant debt after the divorce. He had a good job. Please answer the question, Mrs. Harrison. Yes, she admitted reluctantly. The judge's patience visibly thinned as Cindy tried to spin more tailies. When she claimed she'd given me specific money for lottery tickets, my attorney produced bank records showing she'd actually withdraw large sums from our joint account for herself during that period. Her lies began to unravel. The case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile. The judge even warned her about bringing frivolous lawsuits and suggested she might want to think carefully before trying anything similar in the future. I thought that would be the end of it. But Cindy wasn't done. She cornered me outside the courtroom, her mascara smeared from crying, but her eyes were hard as steel. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are, how you left me with nothing." I couldn't help but laugh. "Nothing? You took everything in the divorce, you cheated on me, emptied our accounts, and still played the victim, and now you're trying it again." "I deserved better than you," she spat. "I still do. You deserve exactly what you got today, nothing." In the weeks that followed, true to her word, she tried to smear my name around town. She told anyone who would listen that I'd somehow cheated her, that I'd hidden money during our divorce, that I was miserly and cruel. But people had seen through her act in court, and they saw through it now. The few mutual friends we still shared told me she'd been calling them, crying about how unfair it all was. Some even admitted they'd known about her affair back then, but had been too uncomfortable to tell me. Now, watching her try to play the victim again, they felt guilty for ever believing her side of the story. I heard through the grapevine that she'd had to pay her lawyers substantial fees out of pocket, since they'd taken the case on the promise of a percentage of the settlement, a settlement that never came. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd ended up losing money trying to take mine. It's been 6 months since the court case. I've moved on with my life, still living modestly despite my wealth. I donate to domestic abuse shelters and organizations that help people rebuild their lives after divorce, something that feels meaningful given my experience. I've even started seeing someone new, though I'm taking it very slowly and being much more careful about protecting myself. Cindy still tries to contact me occasionally, usually when she's been drinking. The messages swing between angry accusations and tearful apologies, with the occasional attempt at manipulation thrown in. I keep them all documented with my lawyer, just in case, but I never respond. Sometimes I think about how differently things might have gone if she'd been honest from the start, both during our marriage and after the lottery win. If she'd shown any real remorse for the affair, if she'd been fair in the divorce, if she'd just lived her life instead of trying to take more of mine. But that's not who she is. The lottery didn't change her character, it just revealed it more clearly. I won't pretend I don't feel a certain satisfaction in how things turned out. There's something poetic about how her greed and dishonesty finally caught up with her in such a public way. But mostly, I'm just grateful. Grateful that I survived the darkness after our divorce. Grateful that I was smart about handling the lottery money. And most of all, grateful that when she came back trying to take more from me, I was strong enough to stand my ground. They say living well is the best revenge. I don't know about that. But I do know that watching someone who hurt you so deeply fails in their attempt to hurt you again, well, that feels pretty good too. I'm not the same man she left broke and broken 3 years ago. I'm stronger now, wiser, and finally free of the last bits of guilt and self-doubt she'd left me with. As for Cindy, last I heard, she's telling anyone who will listen that she's writing a book about her experience with a vindictive ex-husband. Somehow, I doubt it'll be a bestseller. The truth has a way of coming out, and her version of events has more holes in it than a lottery ticket that didn't win.